Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, or even potentially good morning, wherever you happen to be. I'm Dr. Matt Stranik, and this is my esteemed, excellent colleague.
Dr. Doug Reed, hello.
Yeah, hey, and we're joining you for episode 9 of the Ed Non-Tech podcast. Again, it's always a pleasure to imagine that according to according to the analytics, there's a good dozen of you that are checking this out regularly. So that's awesome. And in all honesty, we I think definitely appreciate it. And so yeah,
Yes, indeed, we
so
do.
yeah, and again, just as in keeping with what we've kind of established as our normal intro pattern here, I'll just take a moment to say that I am located in the unceded, traditional, and ancestral home of the Secwepemc people here in Secwepemc, in the Kamloops, interior BC region. And I guess just as far as, paying respect to that as an acknowledgement, one of the cool things about this podcast is, we've decided to kind of do this, uh, a new acknowledgement each time, right? So that's really caused me to have great use now of this Secwepemc People, Land and Laws book, which I've referred to before, Marianne and Ronald Ignace, and where I found myself going with it this time is I'm still kind of making my way through the second chapter about, third chapter, second or third. I apologize. But it's about the cultural transformers and how, certain features of the landscape are actually accounted for within the context of these narratives. But, in terms of it's even more than that. There's a lot. There's some really good tangible examples there of how they run a parallel of the Paleolithic and archaeological records and sort of run that parallel to the creation stories. And there's there's a lot of tacit, explicit similarities there. So again, I always think it's good to try and incorporate the worldview of the place around you, hopefully, the people who have been here for thousands of years. And I've just kind of found myself going to the First Voices website again to check out words such as winter, sleep, and I will wind this down, but I've been doing a bit of a mini upgrade diagnosis of my sleeping patterns. Some of you who may follow me on, Instagram or Facebook or whatever are possibly aware that I have a very fraught relationship with sleep. It's a disorder, and there's this excellent book by this doctor, like a sleep doctor, and just some of the basic stuff he has in here. I just want to summarize by real quickly that I believe in intentionality now, maybe more than I did this time a year ago. Intentionality of just thinking about where I am, and as it turns out, intentionality of how I sleep, because we spend ideally at least 30% of your life asleep, if not more, right? So over to you, Doug.
Okay, I'm Dr. Doug Reed, and I'm currently on the unceded and traditional home of the Mi'kmaq people on the east coast of Canada, and I'm continue to be happy and honored to be here. And if you want some sleep stuff, I might be able to help you off the podcast, because I've had some similar stuff, and I've been a sleep doctor because I have been in front of classes and people have fallen asleep while I was teaching. So
happens to all of us. It has. In fact, I would argue that if you haven't had certain kind of failures, can you really be considered a legit educator? Boom, boom, boom.
Sometimes I haven't considered it a failure, because sometimes the students come in and their life has happened and they're exhausted and they need sleep more than anything else. So I let them sleep. I know it has nothing to do with
if that's the place that they can get that, then yeah. I always figure this whole So the whole thing, that's kind of similar too, as opposed to like these militantly strict, mobile device policies, right? Like, why don't you maybe just switch it up so that you're not relying on a didactic, you know, teaching approach, and such that A, people won't be so bored as to have to do these things, or then B, you can actually potentially incorporate, imagine that, some of these things into the teaching, and vis-a-vis active learning and such.
Oh, for
So
sure.
Doug, I feel like I'm at a bit of a loss here, dude, and I was going to even ask you to shoot me the link, because I don't actually have the notes in front of me, like I normally do. I guess I've got them up on the draft. Can we just take a moment here, and you can just maybe shoot open the or paste it over in Messenger or something to me?
Sure, no worries. No
There,
worries.
there. That's rough. I'm actually asking you to do a tech function during the podcast, and sorry, my man.
Hey, no, it's all good. We both have terminal degrees in ed tech, so there should be a comfort level with this to show that we don't hate technology. We know how to use it, but there's a place for it.
Well,
And I think that's a good way to go.
I think we've been more or less on message with that, my friend. I guess first of all, I'm just going to say shout out to the excellent topic. Yeah, again, I wasn't without it right in front of me on my other monitor. I wasn't, going to feel comfortable to speak to it. Tech and a balanced life in education, which I've kind of not facetiously ascribed that. Someone Take the Wheel, which is the name of a song that I happen to like. But I don't know, Doug. I think anybody who has enough interest in teaching and learning post-secondary to be watching or listening to this, I think it's pretty clear that this is a huge, major, significant topic. So I guess it's not so much the topic selection, just any particular instance as to now.
What really brought it to me was the strike in California, the post-secondary, a whole pile, like thousands upon thousands of
Is that
post-secondary. Yeah, that's going on right now. The United Auto Workers are involved. They all joined the UAW, and they're fighting.
So it's like university and college, or like are they?
Yeah, it's the UC people at least. It's
okay,
and it's big, and we want some stuff, and part of what they want is to get some balance back, and the tech is part of what. There's all kinds of other things that have eroded their rights and abilities to have a real life and work-life balance, but tech is definitely a concern for them.
Well, that's swell. So that comes from then a major news story in my area, which I will certainly become acquainted with, shall we say. Okay, so I guess I would just think too, right? We're actually at the end of the semester now, are we not? I seem to.
There's like a week left.
There's like a week left, and I think at this point, where the majority of assessment has probably been done. This is what I recall. Spent a decade and a half, on the regular in this field. It's a pretty high stress time for students and faculty and staff, right? I mean, people are probably, I think, feeling maybe a little bit raw, a little bit, like you can't, the end is in sight, but not there yet. So I think it's kind of it seems maybe an opportune time to sort of speak to it now. Just, things like how to prevent burnout. And I swear, man, like I'm the last person clearly to actually be speaking to that, because I think if I had made probably some different decisions, taken some better care at certain points, then maybe I might still be gainfully employed or whatever. I guess to me, this topic, this life-work balance, apart from the fact that I haven't always been great about doing that, is kind of speaking now to my tip about, like what can I do to actually improve the quality of sleep? I mean, even just things like making sure you get enough like oxygen in your brain. You know, you were talking last time about like how people with IQs were going down because empirically they studied it because of the additives. So for me, it's like, your brain demands oxygen, right? And if, the levels are just kind of tweaked, I mean, Nietzsche famously suffered from just the most wretched stomach, ailments. And he's like, the whole, when you look into the abyss looks into you kind of dude. It's like, there's some key relationships here between a physical body and an intellectual body, right? So, anyways, yeah. I appreciate the opportunity to dissemble here a little bit, Bud. This is a pretty good topic, which I feel, living through, right? So,
well, that's it. And I did some research from the notes that I know you're going to post, and it's a lot of things that are positives about how to use technology to help do your job. There's a whole bunch, right?
Yeah,
uninterrupted connectivity, flexibility, the work from home, coordination, right? Multiple ways to get your information. Great. All thumbs up on all those things. They're wonderful until you start looking at what it's going to cost you. And every article I found kind of said the same thing. If you don't get this under control, your family life is going to suffer. Everyone said the same thing. Came at a cost to their family life.
True story. I can. Yeah, that's. I don't know. I don't know. There's this whole notion. It's like education is not the only sector to deal with this, and I guess probably it kind of heartens me then from a union kind of labor relations standpoint or whatever, that there are these sympathy strikes or, wildcat stuff going on, in support, right? If I was being really cynical, which I'm never really cynical, Doug, but I think if, maybe if like post-secondary folks were a little bit more involved and engaged within their union, in their places of work where they have the ability to, that they could have probably a better deal than they have right now. I was pretty into the union when I was at my last place, and I'm not casting aspirations on any of it, but just my experience with it was, there's about 20 or 30% who are going to be engaged, and the rest just they're glad it's there, but they're not ringing the bell, And I think if people, really, if you benefit from a collective agreement and actually work to the collective agreement and then kind of stop yourself from working beyond that intentionally, you might be surprised at, the changes that could occur. That would be some disruption, I think. You want to talk about it. If like the post-secondary teaching and staffing cohorts, wherever they are, whoever they are, actually just worked to the limits and not beyond the limits of those agreements. I don't know. That's maybe a bit of a political tangent there, dude. But
if that would only work, and you're right. Like the Curry and Evelyn article talks about something similar, and you're right about that until one person doesn't. And then as soon as that one person doesn't, then they've got to step up. They're getting the extra work in. They're looking better. They're getting more publications. They're doing whatever, and then they get rewarded for that. And as soon as the one person gets the advantage, everybody else is like, whoa, what's going on? And what's really cool is there's a Sarker article, the second article that I shared with you. It talks about people's perceptions of work-life relationships.
Yep.
So is work and life compartmentalized? Are they two different things? I've got a relative. I got a relative that he would not talk about work after work. He talked about work at work, and when he went home, it was a brick wall. I could not get him to talk about it. So that he had compartmentalized, good for him, it worked. And that, or is there an overlapping where life and work kind of combine like a Venn diagram, or is it all encompassing? Right?
Shout
Like
out to
some
Figure
people,
One. Your Figure One here is
yes,
awesome, dude. That's yeah, okay.
that's why I pulled it out because I never thought about that. I'm a compartmentalized, maybe overlapping guy. I was never like I had when I was tenured in Australia, when I had a tenure position, it was encompassing. My whole life was work. There was nothing else. And I hated it. It was like, this cannot be why I am on this planet, why I exist, because this is soul sucking to me. But other people
Okay.
loved it. It,
Can I
it
can
worked
I,
for them.
can I just ask? I mean, I'm
Sure.
speaking of Venn diagrams, speaking of the multi-layered onion that is your career, apparently. Just as I'm hearing about these things, so it's like, okay, I kind of knew vaguely about the academic work in Australia, and I was aware of your time as a tenure in some capacity somewhere. I did not realize that Venn diagram overlapped. That your
Oh, yeah.
tenure here. So how long were you in Australia? How long did you actually live there?
6 years. Just over
Man,
6 years, like 6 years and a couple of days.
man, that's well, I guess that's about like my same amount of Qatar time, basically. But okay, well, I mean, I I don't even know what to make of that. I don't know that there is anything more to make of that except crikey, kangaroo, tie me down sport, something like that.
Oh, I know all those words. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Australia was awesome. I'd go back in a heartbeat. I loved it there.
That's how I feel
But I'd
about
go to
the.
the West Coast. I would go to Western Australia or Tasmania. The rest of it is I'm not as keen on.
Spiders, snakes, and desert, basically. Yeah, that's
Oh yeah, there's spiders and snakes in town. That's not a big deal, right? It's
okay.
I was when I was doing my PhD, I was living with a couple of guys, and this TV show came on. It was like poisonous or deadly creatures of Australia, and like the redback spider popped up, and it was one of those 2 minute snippets of what a redback was, and I'm like, how far would I have to go to see one of those? And the Aussie guy that was sharing the house with us was like, what do you mean? And I'm like, no, seriously, where would I have to go to see one? He's like, there's one on the back step. I'm like, what? So we go to the back step. He opens the door and he's like, see that right there? That's a red. And I'm like, what? Well, we got to kill that. He goes, leave it alone. It's not hurting you. It's territorial. Its whole life exists within like a couple of inches. Just leave it alone. Just don't step on it. You'll be fine. And that was their attitude to it. So that became my attitude. And it was interesting. But it made me look at things a different way. The way Figure One made me look at things. Because some people do have that all-encompassing, there's only work and nothing else. And I've talked to those people and I've worked with them. You know, those ones that it doesn't matter if they're sick, they come to work. If you ever have to chat with them at a social function, it's only about their research, right? That's all they've got. Everything is one big thing that revolves around their research or revolves around teaching.
Well, and I mean, to speak, I guess, to advocate on behalf of those people, because at times either I've been that person or other people might, have thought that I was. I think just sometimes a lot of it is like, if you're passionate about something, you're on it all the time, and like, look, I went from doing this as a part-time thing to having it be my whole life, and now I'm considered an expert in the thing. And when there's people who really are just full of passion and care for what they're doing, I mean, those are definitely the people who should be educators.
Oh
So
yeah.
in terms of the supports that they provide, and in terms of, so now, Doug, I mean, again, what you kind of set us on here, this path, it caused me to kind of just go back, as well as some of this other reading that I've already mentioned. I did spend a bit more time with the Weller book, the
Oh,
Metaphor
right
for
on.
EdTech. Yeah, I
Yep.
went through chapter 3, just because it's freely available, and there's some terminology there that I really dig, and at one point, he talks about it. I I made some notes. I don't know why I'm looking at the monitor about ed tech as being sort of an undiscipline, in as much as it wants to have the rigor of an academic discipline sometimes, but there's things that sort of work against that. But then there's other kinds of opportunities that if we think about things, using conceptual frameworks and such that, using metaphor can actually maybe free us up a little bit. And I won't summarize it because, Weller does just such a great job of writing it in a very user-friendly, audience-friendly way in that chapter. But one term that he came up with, he sort of provides three sort of conceptions of it. My kids are coming up the stairs. Hello, kids. Okay. Hello, dog. I'm doing my recording thingy here, so I'll just keep nice and doing it all, and you all can just keep doing what you're doing. Okay. So anywho, mudlarking. Okay. If you haven't read the chapter, just go to the bit about mudlarking, because to me that is sort of something where, as Weller describes it, it's like, what's your approach to ed tech, as an individual or within a field? By this sort of metaphor, it's like scavenging out of the riverbank, the stuff that washes up. So whether it's a tool or a technology or, a conceptual framework or a useful article. So it's sort of like, the modern equivalent of that would be those folks who go around with the metal detectors, and then you kind of pull it out. And it's like, well, what can we do with this now? I'll just say that aligns to me really nicely with something, and I'll turn it over to you. It's, the notion of bricolage. I'm not sure if you've heard of that concept, the constructionist, concept of, well, what do we make this, teaching and learning out of? Well, we use the material at hand. So what do the students do? They use things that are within their immediate grasp, right? So to me, that notion of bricolage, that constructionist notion, kind of ties up, it kind of runs parallel to that in a certain kind of way, which I like. Speaking of metaphors, right? So didn't mean to go off on a huge, ridiculous tangent there, dude, but just...
No, you didn't at all. And now I'm kicking myself because there was a cartoon that I had put into the document.
Okay.
That I then took out.
Yep.
And it was from the Apollo 13 movie, the one with Tom Hanks. And
I'm aware that it exists. Yeah.
I enjoy it. And there's a scene where they have to do something with some air filters or something. And the guy said, I don't care what it was designed for. I care about what we can do with it. And that seems to go along with what you just described. And it's so true. And it jumps back to a previous podcast where we don't have any definitions. Things are still undefined. And everything gets lumped in, and it's the soft boundaries that we have that everybody gets to decide what things are and how things go. So
Weller speaks to that really well. Weller speaks to that really well. See what I did there? But seriously, he puts it out there as just kind of like, if you agree that it's by nature largely multidisciplinary and that folks come to it from a wide range of backgrounds, then you have to accept that there's going to be no consensus text approach to it. So then, what kind of metaphors are helpful to get from there, right? So again, what I like about, Weller's thing in this book, at least unless I'm mistaken, is that he's using metaphor as like a point, a sort of way of mapping both where we are and then using it as a stepping point to go somewhere helpful. So kudos, Mr. Weller. I don't think I'll bang that any further, but excuse me.
Oh yeah, and along those same lines is, I like the boundaries. I like the definitions to figure out where we are and what we're doing and how we're doing it, so it's clear to everybody. And that goes along with the impact that technology is having on balance in post-secondary, right? Because all those positive things that it can do, there's all kinds of wonderful things tech can do, but I also know that I just read a study, and I didn't include it here. It was something else when I was just puttering, and it was about how if somebody is getting a massage, like they're in the massage table, the massage therapist is doing his thing, and they hear the ding of their phone saying that there's a text message or an email or whatever, they drop 10% in happiness just because the technology has interrupted something else in their life.
I'm telling you, man, there's some small tweaks that I've made to my environment lately, and some of it is like intentional, and some of it is just, kind of a fluke. And one of them is that I have literally, with the settings of my Samsung phone, completely, like, I cannot turn the ringer on anymore. Like, it'll, I'll see it, and the setting will be like, what volume would you like? And it's like, it's at the maximum thing, but like, it just, I've like messed with it so much, but I'm actually happy with that because I don't like having the sound of it. I don't like any kind of notification. I just would like, I'd like to be able to just look at it every so often. Like, oh, somebody tried to reach me 5 minutes ago. Like, it's like, if it's important, they'll leave a message. And if it's not, and if it's a serious emergency, there's got to be somebody other than me. And if there isn't, then they can wait 5 minutes, So, yeah,
you're describing what I was told like 20 years ago when I was doing my master's in Calgary. One of my profs, he was a hardcore constructivist, and I initially hated him. He drove me bonkers until the class rebelled. The class like, no, there's too much reading. You can't make us do all this, right? This is so wrong. And then he explained constructivism to us again. And he's like, no, you don't have to read all of it. Read what you can and read what you want. It's your responsibility. It's your learning.
So,
when that kicked in, yes, but we were prepared for that. We were all people with BEDs or people that had all been educators, and then we got this opportunity. And in that instant, in that class, he went from the most frustrating prof I've probably ever had to the most fantastic prof I ever had. Because once I gripped, I figured out, I got a grip on what he meant. And then it was like, oh, wow, I have the power. I am in control of this. And he's like, yeah, of course. Right? Like, who said you weren't? But that has to happen with tech all over the place. Right? Like, it's as soon as you don't have rules and balances and structures in place, right? Because all three different types of people, when they're envisioning what work is, all three of them have to have their own structures to make this work right. And that's why, like, with profs, when I'm talking to profs, and they're like, oh, I'm teaching online for the first time, right? And I'm like, tell the students that if you'll reply within 24 hours, unless it's a weekend. And they're like, oh, but what if they send you an email? It's like, they can wait, right? Like, you expect, if they send you an email at 2 a.m, are you going to wake up and answer the email? And you're like, well, no, that's ridiculous. I'm like, students will send emails at 2 a.m.
I'm telling you.
So it's
everybody, like, nobody wants to be mean. Nobody wants to be mean. Nobody wants to shut out any students.
Right.
But nobody, but if you don't advocate for your own mental space and your own social space and just, having, like, those boundaries make you mentally ready to be your best version of your teacher self, rather than the sort of ragged, running off the side of your desk and never having the stuff switched off. Like, your enjoyment of it and your effectiveness at it are just going to degrade because you're not taking care of yourself. I mean, again, it's like with me and my sleeping thing. I mean, I've finally just this week, used my CPAP machine like 4 nights or something consecutively in a row since I got it. And like, I can tell I'm getting an uplift of oxygen. And this is something very simple that I have known that I could do, but I always just thought, well, it's an inconvenience or something. Last week, I just had a really tough instance with insomnia and some other things where it's like, if I don't make the small adjustments that are in front of me, my health is going to fail. And like, why wouldn't I do this? It just became clear. So I think, if you're looking at your teaching practice as a kind of body, with health concerns, then maybe why not give your teaching its best chance to be as good as it can, right?
Oh,
So,
yeah. And the Dinsa et al. Article talks about stuff like that. It talks about how important your general health and well-being is, and how you have to get control of how this technology is doing things, and how the rest of your work-life balance fits. So yeah, you segued into that article really nicely.
well, thank you. I'm going off on the rails here a bit. Not off on the rails. I mean, I'm kind of taking us into the weeds here, Doug. So I'm glad you're able to kind of steer us back.
In part, yeah. Thank you. That's I kind of like doing that. I like the connecting of things and how it all goes together.
Oh,
and
yes.
The thing that blew me away as I was doing the research for this
Yep.
was the differences in culture. Like the Salomon Harrelson article.
Well, here's something that's dope, and I think this might be the one you're talking about. Yeah. Okay, so academia is a greedy workplace. I saw that, and I'm just like, I just started chuckling. Like, yeah, I'm thinking of like Scrooge McDuck sitting there, and they're just, and he's just like, I just need a little bit more from you. Just come on. Yeah, that's the and this is the Salman Palsson article. Yeah, so please, I'm just carry on. Let's.
Yeah, no, it's they studied they talked to Germans and they talked to Swedes, and they said in Germany, if you want to be an academic, you can't have anything else. You can't have a life. It has to be 100% full-time devotion, right? You have to be able to have like geographic mobility. It's like, yeah, so when it comes time to move or go to do whatever, you got to go do it, right? You can't have a life that is your life. And the Swedes were the opposite. The Swedes were like, no, you need to have a life outside, right? You need that balance because otherwise, holy smokes, what kind of research are you doing? What kind of like work colleague are you? Like, how can you get insights when you're doing nothing but that? Like, you need a broader breadth of experiences.
And since we're just on the topic, I'm just going to say I will now, on the record and publicly, take the opportunity to apologize. I think to students I've had, colleagues, other people I've worked with, for the times that I wasn't taking care of myself and that my work suffered. I've had occasion, I think, in my career, definitely, besides the present circumstances where there wasn't the fit overall, but where some really kind people have just kind of come up to me at kind of key points in my career and just said, they didn't make a big show of it. They just approached me after a meeting and just like, are you okay? And it wasn't ever, and it wasn't meant as like your thing is suffering. It was like it was from a legitimate place of concern. And I think in a healthy work environment, I've had those moments, and then I guess other times, I don't know. It comes down to communication sometimes, right? Like what you're sharing with people, how you put yourself out there, and then what you expect of yourself too, right? So it's tough. Yeah, I mean, again,
but
I don't
there's
know what
another
your
side. There's another side. There's empathy and compassion for other human beings.
That's true.
And empathy and compassion for other living creatures. And sometimes that doesn't exist in some pockets. It just doesn't. So yeah, that goes.
It's the blood sport notion. It's the whole, if you're not moving it forward, then you're receding. It's like, the shark will is that true? There are certain types of sharks that they have to move or their metabolism shuts down. I mean, you live,
I'm not that type of doctor.
Sir, this is
I've
a
heard that
Wendy's.
story too, but I don't know.
Right, but isn't it like an urban myth? But it is a good thought though, right? It's like if you're not, and we talked about this is I think in the last episode in terms of like economic growth and technological growth. The whole notion is like this whole bogus, I think, concept of like if you're not moving forward, there's something wrong. If you're not like demonstrating empirical forward progress or acquisition, then So I just
Yeah, I don't know if you ever saw that. There's a Will Ferrell movie called Ricky Bobby, where he plays like a NASCAR driver. And
missed that one.
There's a scene. It's pretty funny, but there's a scene in it where his dad and is this estranged dad, and the conversation is like, "If you're not first, you're last," and it's like, what does that mean? And so his whole life he's trying to be first because his dad said if he's not first, he's last. And we get on that treadmill, right? We got to pump out another article. Oh, we got to get that research grant out. Oh, we've got to do that extra PD. I got to put my hand up to do blah, blah, blah. I have to be sure to check my email at 11 o'clock at night just in case my boss sent me that thing, and I'll respond before the morning.
I'm telling you, man, some of the worst moments of my career have been when somebody has communicated to me outside of office hours. When I got that email from that person at 9 o'clock at night on a Sunday, and it CC'd some other immediate colleagues, and I was looking at it at like 11 o'clock at night, man, I mean, I'm not going to go further with that specific anecdote, but I'm saying like, if I wish that person had sent the email the next day, not because I regret the content of it, but I almost just think, what kind of culture led to that, And again, me responding to it, I would go back and say to myself, my friend, you just need to wait until the morning and reply, as opposed to replying at night in the heat of the moment. That's kind of the extreme thing that can happen. And I'm not trying to place any undue weight on a strictly hypothetical incident, but it's the kind of thing where I think if people were just more like, okay, let's all like just try and live within the agreed upon hours of work with this stuff, then maybe we're all going to be better off, a social contract, a social contract, if you will, sort of.
And there's no rules to that as much anymore, right? There just isn't.
There's nothing. And it speaks to what you described too. It's like there's nothing to discourage it, and there's everything to gain for the people who are effective at it, right?
So it's the same as the social media meme out there, because I'm an introvert, right? At heart, I'm an introvert. And somebody said there's all these magazines and books that have been published on how to get introverts to be more extroverted. And there's not a single book telling extroverts to just shut the hell up for a few minutes.
I've got some things to say about that. Just like,
sorry, I know that's a tangent, but
no, man, no, I'm not. That's not to you. That's not to our lovely, handsome, and like all you people. That wasn't you. It's this notion of like, let's make the introverts more extroverted. You can just eat a bag of like dog excrement, man. I'm just like, we introverts have had it. And people are going to be like, that guy thinks of himself as an introvert. And I'm telling you, like, this whole outre persona has been developed to, I do legit enjoy people, but the other part of it is, like, you have to do things against your nature sometimes to make a living. And that's kind of where I went from being just, weird little literary man, which, people probably might still say I am, but like just being able to even talk to this and be like, okay, this is going to exist on the internet publicly for the next 5 or 10 years. I mean, whatever, right? So I don't know. It's about balance and how you find it and where, don't you think, Doug?
It really is. And part of the problem with technology is it's changed the balance. And it's not always changing the balance positively. Like the very first cartoon that I sent that I know you'll post, it just says the printer that simply worked and other fairy tales. Right?
The thing that's what we all wanted. I remember like 1980s, Forest-Hill Elementary School, Fredericton, New Brunswick, the library, you know, the little, what I recognize now is probably not even like the size of my small living room here, but at the time it was huge. And they had these like the world of the future hardcover illustrated books. It was going to be like moon colonies, moving sidewalks. It's like, well, they got the moving sidewalks at Pearson, and if they did do a moon colony, Elon Musk would own it. So that's not the future that I would want anymore. But it was still, it was cool, man. Like, you know, so just, but now what do I want? Just simple interface, you know, barrier-free first usage, you know. Oh, and you got this one.
Oh, wait. I have a little anecdote for this one.
When I was in Australia, we're talking about the one with the
printer.
Teenage kids. Oh no,
nope,
okay,
not even yet. We're still back at the printer for me.
Okay.
When I was an international student that spoke English. English was my first language. So whenever there was an issue with the international students and the faculty, I was the guy that would go, because otherwise they just dismissed them because their English was broken and my English was not broken. And they ended up giving up like the post-grad labs. And so they moved us to another place, and there was no printer. And so I went to talk to the head of school, and the head of school was like, well, when I went to when I went to Oxford, we didn't have printers. We didn't even have computers. We had to go do blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, I understand that. And I understand that that was 35 years ago. And guess what? We have to print our stuff out to give it to our supervisors. You didn't. Like the world has changed, and you got a space in the library, and you had to go through and find the books and find the articles, and that's great. We have to use the internet. Like, we don't have an option, right? Like, the world has moved on, and you're still using the old paradigm of when you were a student. And it's like, yeah, you didn't need electricity either, right? So we don't have a printer. You have just stopped all of us from getting our work done because we need to print this stuff out for our supervisors. I was like, oh, well, maybe we'll get to it. It's like, I just paid $9,000 in tuition for this semester. That's not an option. This needs to be fixed tomorrow, because I know what I can do, and I know I can go to this other faculty, the Faculty of International Students, and have a meltdown, and you don't want that. So how about just get us a damn printer that works?
You took it to him. You took it to him, and he wasn't gonna get away with the lack of provision.
Yeah, what ended up happening is my supervisor came to see me the next day and said, I have an office down here for you. Why don't you come start doing your work in this office? And so they pulled me out of the room where all the other international students were. Let's
separate the rabble riser from the others. Yeah,
yeah. Basically, that's what happened.
Well,
and everybody was really nice, but it was just one of those things.
If you don't self-advocate, then, I mean, you know, just,
yeah.
It took me a long time to realize that if you don't sort of look out for your own interests, nobody else will, for sure, right? So
yeah.
Cool, man. Well, we'll just keep going through here. I got to ask you, never let your computers know that you were in a hurry. Computers smell fear. That's an awesome one.
It's true.
Are you aware of the source of that image?
Yeah, that's War Games.
That's War Games. Okay. I don't even know that I've seen War Games, but on the face of it, I like it very much. It's about they hack the internet,
Oh, wait.
right?
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Skip this bit if you haven't seen War Games and you want to see it.
Okay.
Go
But
ahead. Sorry.
that's the premise of the film, isn't it?
Yeah.
Nuclear war.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's it. It's smart aleck teenagers save the world. There's a
really good short story that I always somehow end up managing to speak to about at some point when I'm talking about ed tech. At a certain point, it's like, okay, are you familiar with the science fiction writer Harlan Ellison?
Oh yeah.
Okay. I have no mouth and I'm a scream. Have you read that one?
No.
It's about these 4 or 5 beings who are trapped in what is left of the world by a malignant, insane artificial intelligence that hates them and is trying to kill them at all times. But what he's done is taken away their ability to actually die. So it's about it's about learning management systems, dog. It's not, but I have no mouth and I'm a scream. We're talking about metaphors, right? It's like the actor, the malignant, raging consciousness that hates the narrator and his characters. Why does he hate them so much? Because they brought, I'm saying him, it into being. That's kind of a bit of a, how much self-awareness should these these actors have? Man, people are going to be like, listen to that now, like, Matt was doing okay, and then he started talking about science fiction stories. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Doug.
So the last little bit I want to talk about is just the dog in the fire cartoons, like the This Is Fine.
Classic. That's a meme for our times, my friend.
And that is our school system, right? That is our education system, right? We have all kinds of problems.
You're talking K to 16 here. You're talking K to 12. You're talking.
I'm talking everything.
Any way in which learning and teaching and schooling occurs. Is that what you're kind of speaking to here, bud? The Western paradigm of education as we know it?
Especially post-secondary, right? Especially post-secondary. And that leads to just some cutesy stuff because you went into sci-fi, so I'm going hard. I don't know if you've seen any of the Marvel movies, like with the Hulk and stuff.
I'm aware of the call. Dude, I have kids. I have 2 boys. I saw all of those movies as they came out until about 2 years ago. But yes, do go on, good sir. Yeah.
There's a scene in Thor Ragnarok where it's Bruce Banner, Dr. Bruce Banner is comparing himself to the Hulk, and he's like, everybody loves the Hulk, everybody wants the Hulk, and he's like the alter ego, right? He's the dual personality guy.
Mark Ruffalo is a great actor, anyway.
Oh yeah, he's fantastic. But he says, how many PhDs does the Hulk have? 0. How many PhDs does Banner have? 7. Right? And then a meme instantly came out, and it's like, he's got 7 PhDs. No wonder he's angry all the time.
Well, I mean, like,
and it's when then somebody started to make a list, and it's like all the Batman villains that have advanced degrees, right? Harley Quinn's a psychologist, right?
Yeah, and no,
the Mad Hatter's a neuroscientist. Like, there's Poison Ivy's in.
That's right. Grad school changes you. That's right. I appreciated that, and it's like
really does.
And then so this, and then you got this Jay Cummings tweet or Jay Cummings, whatever. Viewers without a PhD. They are just saying he's a smart villain. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Viewers with a PhD. Grad school and academia drove him to madness. Like, you saw it here first.
Because we have the other context, right? We did those final advanced degrees.
Well, and it's meant to stress you out, and it's meant to, like, it's this completely I mean, I don't know. I lack qualification beyond just kind of my own lived experience to speak to that in any real, tangible, meaningful way, such as what it deserves. I'll just say I've never seen a group of people that I've, as my work, colleagues, cohort, whatever, who work so hard just to hold their position, like who just go where like working, twice as much or, more than what you're expected to is just considered part of the deal, right? Like somehow it seems that like within academia generally, that is like behavior that gets rewarded. And I just, my own things aside, I just say, as a sector, how is that sustainable, and how well are we actually doing teaching and learning and research in such burned out and burdened situation? You know what I mean, Doug?
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. It's a cultural myth, and it's working, right? For every 6 people with a PhD in Canada, there's 1 academic job. Right? So
supply side economics works real well for that.
That's
it's like
exactly it.
And then it's like the trickle down of public dollars, such to the people who are willing to prove themselves tenacious, connected, lucky, and just like morally robust enough in certain ways to grab it, right?
Yeah.
Then
you got the ones in the academic ghetto that is sessional work, trying to climb that ladder, right? So they have to do all this stuff. They have to have their email open at midnight and be checking. They have to be working on papers and find out that one of the places they work at is like, no, you can't publish that under our name. You have to do something else, right? And that's the last cartoon I want to show you. It's the one that says I'm writing a book about all the things I should be doing in my life. It's an autobiography.
An ought to biography.
An ought to biography. But when I left academia, like I went from 80 hours a week, minimum 80 hours a week is what I was doing. And then I'm like, wow, other jobs, I can just go home. And it'll be waiting for me the next day. I don't have to do another 4 hours when I get home that night. And it was just like the difference in being able to leave a job at work and go have another life or go have a life was shocking to me.
It's possible, like within law and within medicine, within certain kind of professional fields, this is kind of the norm. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily even say that what we're describing is specific to education. I think to the field of education. It really is just like, I think, to make a general point as we sort of wind down at the end here. We're not saying that we have any kind of answers to this. I think you are.
I have answers.
Doug's saying that he has
technology. Put some barriers up. Say it out loud. Say, this is our policy. This is what we want, right? And build your frameworks around that. That's because otherwise, it's the 1 or 2 exceptions it's going to be the tail wagging the dog. And if you're lucky enough to be covered by a collective agreement, then I think it's incumbent upon you to see how that actually translates into what your workload is. And I think academic workers, people, in the field, whatever, I think people got to be more robust in both knowing about what their limits and obligations are and pushing back if necessary against managers or other academic workers who are not on the same page. So that's my personal thing. Get organized. Stay organized. Stay abreast of your documents. Yeah. Be proactive.
Be proactive.
Here's what we're doing. Here's how it's going. Here's what
I,
our
li-
plan is.
I've been meaning to compliment you on the sweater since
Oh, thank
we
you.
started recording the thing. That's you're setting the tone, my friend. That's good. That's man. You're only pulling that out now. That's
Oh yeah,
man.
yeah. It's my Xmas sweater, and it
Wow.
fits. So I've lost weight. So it's win-win.
That is like a win-win-win situation.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
looking forward to that movie Violent Night, where Santa is this former CIA killer or something like that. It's out right now. It's got David Barbour, the guy from Stranger Things, in it, the police officer. Yeah. Anyway, not that we're winding it down for the Christmas season, but I think actually with the next episode, Doug, we're getting into the double digits, which is pretty significant. I was going to say substantial and significant both. Double digits right there.
I think it's so exciting. I think
we've
learned so much.
What it's doing, man.
I'm so excited.
Well, no, man. I mean, for me, it's just like there's sort of benefits outside of just getting to kind of engage in the in this kind of discussion, which in itself is awesome. But even just it's kind of given me a purpose and structure to my reading a little bit more. There's just some other things, and I'm also taking some of our processes here, Doug, and I'm going to be exporting that towards a music podcast, which I'm going to be recording with my friend Dan in I was going to say in New Brunswick. He's in Nova Scotia, but we're both from New Brunswick, and we've got a perfectly good template here, except now it's just just have to change it, right? Use a different theme, and switch it up a bit. So from education into other, areas is I think what we're after here, right? More or less seeing how things can transfer. So anyways.
I'd be disappointed if you didn't take the stuff that you learned from this over to your other podcast.
Well, again, today New Brunswick, tomorrow the world. And that'll be the last time I'll shout that out that conspicuously. So thank you for humoring me there, Doug. You got anything else you want to say before we wind down here, bud? Or?
Other than have a nice night, I really don't. I hope people enjoyed listening and they keep listening.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us, Ever. Take care, and I will hit the stop recording button right now. Take care, everybody.